My partner has been through a lot. We had been dating for 2 years and planning a life together when she was diagnosed with cancer. At the time she was in school for a dual graduate degree program and managed to finish it. Treatment was rough on her and she struggled a lot through it, and hasn't done well mentally dealing with the unfairness of it all. How different her body is after surgeries, and the fear of it coming back. All perfectly understandable, and I've been as supportive as I can throughout it all. Now all that said, she went into the graduate programs after we started dating, and one of the degrees was at a very expensive school for something that was only related and not required for the work she planned on doing, which would never pay very well. I questioned her about it gently at the time, but she was adamant about getting the expensive degree. It was her life. And we agreed it would be fine, because we could utilize public service loan forgiveness to pay off her debt that would total $100K. This was before cancer. I earn a considerable amount more than her. When we started dating I made 4x, and even with her degrees I make 3x what she does. I've always been happy to spend money on her. And after having moved in together over a year ago and proposing shortly after, I really went into the mindset of it being our money. When we moved in she was finishing her degrees and I covered 100% of our bills, including some tuition costs for an extra semester since she was slightly delayed by her treatment. This was totally fine because school was her job and she'd be able to contribute when she graduated, and even though I make much more, if we are both working full-time jobs it felt fair. Now that she has graduated and started working, she is miserable at her job mostly because she is incredibly anxious that she isn't doing it well, and doesn't feel like her school prepared her. She was already prone towards anxiety and depression, she takes medicine for it. But mentally she is in a very bad spot because of all this. On top of that she feels like she doesn't doing enough for her health, mostly exercise, to keep her healthy to reduce the cancer from coming back, but she says she is too tired after work to do much else than occasionally go on a walk. Recently she got the idea in her head to start working half weeks to give her more time to exercise and stress her out about work less. She says not knowing for sure how long she'll live has changed her priorities about working. Before all this she was a pretty driven type of personality, working multiple jobs. But working part-time doesn't meet the requirements for public service loan forgiveness. We've talked about it extensively and she feels it is important for her to work part-time. But I am not very comfortable with the idea for many reasons. I get where she is coming from in her needs, but feel like she is looking for a quick fix to her problems. That puts us in a pretty big hole financially because she is so miserable instead of fully dealing with her problems. I'd be more okay with it if it was short-term while she sorted through some things, but she says she just wants more time to exercise and be stress-free, so she doesn't know when that would end. I just feel like she is taking our relationship, which is already unbalanced, and asking to make it a lot more so, and solely because she is in a position to do so because of my job. We can financially afford it, but I haven't been able to come to terms about the disproportionality it would create in our relationship. P.S. My longtime partner wants to start working half-time to relieve her work stress and give her more time to take care of her health, but it makes me uncomfortable because she has $100,000 of debt and it would make our relationship very unbalanced. My wife and I have been together for 5 years, married for 4. She had a bad marriage before me and had a child. I had no problem stepping up to the plate to help her raise her child. The father wants nothing to do with my wife or his kid. To the point, I had 2 friends that I've had since I was 16. They were both female and I had dated one of them for 4 years, but we split up agreeing that we made better friends than an actual couple. This never happens in real life apparently. She's always been my go for advice, and I made our friendship 100% transparent for my wife when we first met, and never did anything out of habit. My friend and I still said we loved each other, but more of a platonic love. We both loved our current partners and never wanted anything between each other. However, after a few years this took a toll on my wife and she asked me to stop telling her that I loved her. So I explained this to my friend and she said she understood and would have no problem doing so. Another month or so I still have 100% transparency with my wife as to make her feel comfortable. I got deployed and my friend had just had her baby and asked me if I wanted to FaceTime to see her. I said yes, naturally happy for her and her husband. After a nice chat and meeting her new son, I got a call from my wife a few days later asking if I had talked to her. KN FaceTime. I told her that I had and why, also telling her what we had discussed. My wife then didn't talk to me the rest of my deployment. When I got home I explained that I was sorry it hurt her feelings and wanted to make things better. She told me to never talk to her again. I tried to explain that it was just a friendship and that neither of us wanted a relationship. My wife took it upon herself to call her and tell her that if she didn't stop talking to me forever that she would tell my friend's husband that we were having an affair. She did not tell me any of this. I quickly noticed she had blocked me on everything, including my number. I had no idea what happened, so I confronted my wife and she told me that she was certain I was cheating on her, and that my friend and I were having an affair. She then told me that she had called her and only asked her to not talk to me anymore. I was slightly upset but stood by her decision and held no grudge. I feel like this event led to the breakdown of everything. She started to have no trust in anything I did, constantly going through my phone, and she would constantly lock her phone, or lock herself in the bathroom talking to someone on the phone. She started blaming her job for her unhappiness. I told her that I could pull extra hours at work if she wanted to quit to find a new one. She quickly quit her job and made no attempt to find work again. I was enlisted at the time. She said she hated that I was gone all the time, so I offered to go reserves to be with her more. She said that would fix it. So I got a civilian job that paid decent, but we had to move. The job is stressful and I'm not very fond of being a civilian. She has now come to the conclusion that I need to get out of the military and quit my civilian job, and we to move again, and that's the only way she'll be happy. I feel like I've given up everything for her to be happy. I'm trying to show her the logic that there is no way for us to survive if neither of us works. I love my wife and don't want a divorce, but I feel like she will never be happy and I'm not sure how to fix it. She blames everything on me and says that I'd be happier with someone else, or says she's leaving again. I'm currently deployed again, and the last week I was home she wouldn't talk to me or spend time with me and our daughter. She would lock herself in the bedroom all day. Then at night she would call me names and say I don't care about her and I never spend time with her. I bought a house a few months ago and moved in last month. The previous owner was a friendly old man that could no longer live alone, so he decided to sell and move in with his daughter. Just to be clear now, apparently he had been allowing use of his driveway to his disabled neighbor lady, largely because street parking is extremely limited and what little street parking there is pretty much instantly occupied. What I am saying is, unless you have a driveway you end up having to park a good 5-minute walk away, and that's the best case scenario. I put disabled in quotation marks because the lady in question is just really overweight, and I am not sure if that counts as disabled. Obviously I was unaware of this, so I was surprised to see a large SUV parked in my driveway when I moved in. I ended up having to knock on several doors asking whose car it was because the movers could not stand still on the busy road too long. I figured out it was the neighbor's car, so after a good 10 minutes of knocking, an extremely angry enormous lady opened the door. I told her to move the car and she immediately started arguing that the neighbor said it was fine. I told her he moved out. I moved in and no, it is not fine, and to move it because the movers need to unload my stuff. She begrudgingly did. I ended up seeing her walking back half an hour later completely wet with sweat. Now a few days later I went back to work and lo and behold, the SUV is parked in my driveway again. I go over there again, spend 20 minutes knocking on the door before this lady opens the door, again, visibly angry. I tell her to move her car. My driveway is not public parking. She protests, saying her ankles can't take walking the distance and claims I can easily walk. I tell her that while that might be true, it's my goddamn driveway and I want to park there myself. Again she moves her car. Again I spot her half an hour later drenched in sweat making her way home. Well, it happened again a week ago, and this time she would not open her door. I got tired of it and had her SUV towed. She of course came to my house to scream at me. I told her to get the hell off my property. A few days later I had a small fence installed with a lock on it to make sure it did not happen again. I have since been getting dirty looks from her and one other neighbor, and when I told my mom she told me I should be nicer to people. I do feel sort of bad too. She clearly struggles with the walk after all. I'm a 30-year-old male and my best friend got married last week. I just bought a house and my wife is expecting out son in November. So I let him know I was limited in what I could contribute financially, but did tell him I would try my best. So, I went to the bachelor party in Maine, I rented the tux, and paid for mine and my wife's dinner at the rehearsal dinner. I also had a gift of $300 that I was going to give them, but we will get to why I didn't give it to them. His now wife, then fiancé, texted me multiple times a day with updates fine. I didn't always respond, and it got to the point where if I didn't respond at least once a day, I'd get a call from my buddy. I have a full-time job and am redoing some rooms in my house, so I'm busy. She texted me for the following reasons. 1. My wife was not allowed to talk about our pregnancy at all. She didn't want anyone to focus on that more than her, the bride. 2. She was not going to order special food for my wife, no one asked her to. My wife was fine with whatever she was going to be served. 3. I was not helping the groom enough, he had to help her with favors, seating charts and programs. So I had to help him with those things, according to her. She also said to get ready to help with thank you notes after the wedding. 4. She said if I was a true best man, I would offer to pay for the bar bill. I don't even know what that means. 5. She had to read to approve my speech before the rehearsal dinner and wanted to be included as much as my buddy. She told me to make up things if I had to. I was also not allowed to include anyone but the two of them, and no inside jokes or stories about my buddy that didn't include her. 6. Her last text said to tell my wife to keep it together and not make a pregnancy scene during the wedding. Also, she wanted her to choose a dress that downplayed her pregnancy as much as possible. I was just so aggravated. I spoke to my friend to see if he could reason with her. He told me to just play ball on this one, it's her day, and to cut him a break, because he'd be dealing with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I was annoyed but calmed down. The day of, all the bride and my buddy do is scold me, berate me, and bark orders. I head down to the bar for a drink. The bride's mother is there and warns me not to get drunk because I've ruined her daughter's day enough. I didn't give them the card with the cash and in the speech. I used my friend's exact wording about having to deal with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I wished them the best and told him I'd always be there for him, especially during the divorce.